So welcome everybody to another session, and today I have the pleasure to present the topic of internal family systems. This is a method created by Richard, and there is a book that is called No Bad Parts, and I really resonated with the method. I really resonated with the concepts of the book, and this methodology really fits very well with any other healing modality that you may be using, like inner child work, reparenting, shadow work, attachment theory. Basically, anytime you are facing a conflict, most likely you can use this method to discover who is behind, what are the voices. And yes, I am wearing today a very funny sweater of Bert and Ernie from Sesame Street. And I was going to change myself because I thought this is not a serious sweater to show up with. But then as I was looking at it, and as I was looking what they represent, this is kind of an example of maybe two voices that we may have inside of us when we are making a choice, when we are acting. One is goes with the flow, is funny, it's in the moment. And the other one is maybe more serious, more structured, more things need to be right and organized. And how many of you resonate with the idea of having different parts talking in your head when you are going throughout your day? And this is what internal family systems is all about. It's about understanding that we are a we. So me, Emilio, I am a we. I have a lot of different parts inside of myself that are always chipping in, always talking, always giving an opinion. And many times, these parts of ourselves, they have something to say, and they do what they do because they are trying to protect us from something. And that's why the book is called No Bad Parts, because the author, after doing this for like 40-something years, I think, or 50 years, he says that he has never encountered a part in any person that he has done work with that part didn't have anything to say. The intention of that part was always to protect, was always to keep the person safe. So that's why it's not a bad part. We just have to give that part space to talk to us, space to share. Why are you here? Why are you doing what you are doing? And we're going to dive into the specifics of the methodology with the specific names that they use. But this is basically the concept, right? There is a self, that is our true self. And then there are all these little parts that we create throughout our lives that they learn something. And then some parts are exiled because they were not accepted. Some parts are protectors, and they show up when they feel that there is something happening and they need to protect. And then there are parts called firefighters, and those are the ones that react very intentionally, aggressively, when they sense that pain is coming up and they want to shut it down as quickly as possible. And the problem with these parts is that, as the book says, and as the author, as Richard says, they are stuck in the past. So they are trying to keep you safe doing what they did in the past. So maybe a part of me, a part of Emilio, is from when I was, let's say, 6 years old. And in that time, for example, I learned that maybe being loud and expressing myself openly and big was not accepted. So when I did that and I was shut down and I was required, slow down, don't be so loud, don't be so expressive, this is too much, you have to contain yourself. So maybe in that moment I learned, okay, this part of myself, it is not a good fit in my family system. It is not accepted. Maybe I will not receive love if I am like this. So I take that part and I exile it. It goes to the exile. Basically, it goes away because it's not allowed. But that was me when I was 6 years old. And then now I am 44 years old, 45 years old, whatever, how old you are. That part keeps doing the same thing that it did when it was 6 years old. And that's why this method of internal family systems will allow you to have a conversation with that part, to really connect that part with yourself, your true self, and then allow that part to relax and allow that part to say, okay, I trust you, self, that now you can keep me safe. And I don't have to have this role anymore. I don't have to do this behavior anymore because I know that you can keep me and Emilio safe. So this is one example of how it can unfold. Okay. Yeah, Peter says, I always related to Ernie when younger, now more like Bert. I think we all have a mixture of both, right? And depending on the situation, Ernie will show up or maybe Bert will show up, and sometimes they both will show up together. So I think it's a good analogy, like having these kind of two personalities. But imagine that instead of two, you may have a bunch of them, and there is an internal family systems between your parts that it's activated and it's real and it's working always, right? So imagine you being able to have a conversation with those parts and you being able to heal those parts, to integrate those parts of yourself that were exiled, and then integrate them back in your life in a way that feels good, in a way that feels safe. So let's dive into the specifics of the book. And again, I have the aid of my phone here. I had some of the main takeaways so that I don't forget anything important. But before I get started, how many of you are aware and are familiar with internal family systems? How many of you are aware of what it is, how it works? Maybe you've done some therapy using this method or some inner work. And how many of you have no idea? Maybe you use a percentage. 0%, I have no idea. 100%, I am a professional on it. And then anything in between. Where are you rating yourself? So a little bit, general overview knowledge, aware but have not practiced, aware but not familiar, it's been recommended, familiar, no. Okay, so we have a nice variety. So why don't we go through the basics first, and then we can extend the conversation into, because this is fascinating, because this methodology, you will see how this ties really nicely with the topics that we have covered in the past few days. Attachment, the will of consent, executive functioning skills, and how we can use them to apply this method. Because this method will talk about, guess the word, pausing. We'll talk about that. And then no matter what area of your life you are struggling with, you are going to be able to use this method to discover what's happening. So for example, if you are trying to organize your home and there is a part of you that is resisting the process, or there is a part of you that is having a hard time letting go, you can use this method to invite those parts of yourself that are resisting the process and the parts of yourself that want to do this. And then they can have a conversation, and then you can discover what's happening. You can discover, where is this coming from? What part of me is resisting the process, and why is that part of me resisting the process? So if I were to go through this process of organizing my home, what can happen negatively according to this part that is trying to prevent me from doing this? And you gaining this clarity, you giving those parts of yourself space to express, space to share with you what is it that they are doing and why they are doing that. It's going to open up the door to, conversation, being very empathetic, very loving, very accepting, curious with that part, letting that part express, not shut down, not repress. And then once the part feels heard, once the part feels like, okay, you are hearing me, I understand that you understand why I'm doing this, and now you're offering me a different way of doing this in a way that you feel safe and I feel safe, then you can move forward differently. So this is how powerful this can be. And this can apply to organizing your home. This can apply to organizing your finances. This can apply to the relationship with your partner. This can apply to you dating someone new if you don't have a partner. This can apply to your work, to your passion, to your hobbies, to practicing self-care. honestly, any area of your life that you are struggling with, you can use this method to invite the parts of yourself that are involved, that are active, and then heal those parts and reintegrate the pieces of yourself that you lost along the way, most likely because they were not accepted, they were not adequate. Okay, so are you guys ready to maybe dive into the specifics of this with the specific words that they use? And then after, maybe we can have a conversation and we can see how the practicality of this. Yes. Organizing resistance, that's me. I see you, Heather. Thanks for sharing. Okay, so as I said, the philosophy of these internal family systems is that we are a group of parts. So inside of ourselves, we have a group of parts that they interact with each other. Those parts is what we call, it's an internal family system because it's inside of us. And it's like a family that we all have inside of us. It's like a board of people making decisions, expressing and taking the lead in specific occasions. And sometimes those parts are integrated. They function together, sometimes separately, sometimes they are opposed to each other. So it's very interesting because this is an internal family system that you have been creating throughout your life. So each part has a role, okay? And there are no bad parts. As I mentioned, the book says, and the author, like every part has a mission. Every part has a reason why they do what they do. So there is not really a bad part. And then there is a core self, a true self, they call it. And that is the part of you that is your true self. There is not a part that was created to protect something. That is your core. And then how do you know when you are in your core? The book shares 8 C's that will help you identify if you are making a decision, if you are talking from your true self or not, or if there are parts taking over in that process. So the 8 C's are calm, so a sense of inner peace, and you are calm. Curiosity, so you can be curious. Clarity, so you are seeing the situations and parts clearly without being overwhelmed, without being triggered. You are being able to be calm and you are able to be curious. Okay, so calm, curiosity, clarity, compassion. So you can offer kindness and understanding to all the parts that may show up in the process. Confidence, you will trust that your core self, your true self is going to be able to deal with this situation. Even though now maybe you don't know what's happening, you trust yourself, you trust your core self that it will do what it needs to be doing. It will be able to manage the situation, being calm, being curious, having clarity, etc. And then courage, being courageous. So you will be able to face the difficult emotions or experiences without feeling fear. You may sense fear, but that fear is not going to block you. It's not going to stop you. You are going to have the courage to push forward because you know that this is a part that it's stuck in the past. It's trying to keep you safe using strategies that no longer serve you. And you need to have the courage to confront that while being compassionate, curious, calm. So this is a combination of things. Creativity is the 7th one. Okay, finding new ways to heal and interact with your parts. And this really ties nicely with the cognitive flexibility, that executive functioning skill that allows you to really see reality from different angles. And then connectedness. So feeling a sense of harmony between yourself and with others. So those are the 8 C's that the book talks about. And then to recap, it's calm, curiosity, clarity, compassion, confidence, courage, creativity, and connectedness. Okay? So those are the qualities of your true self. And in any given situation, if you can just go through this list and then rate yourself, am I being curious? Am I being courageous? Am I being clear? Am I am I able to step up from this situation and observe it from the distance so that I can gain clarity, so that I am not reactive, I am not triggered, I am not overwhelmed. Can I have the courage to confront this without shutting down, without being avoidant, without being anxious, without feeling attacked? And then again, this ties really nicely with your attachment style. Maybe you notice that in some circumstances you are avoidant and you will avoid the situation, you will withdraw from the situation, you will not engage. So this is an opportunity for you to really go through this list and say, oh, wow, yeah, I am avoiding this. So I need to find my courage to be able to be present. I need to find my confidence to know that I can trust what's going to happen. And then I can trust that I will see clarity once I am here and I am showing up from this place from my true self. Okay. But again, these parts of you are going to show up and they are going to impact that true self. And then those parts are going to take over. And that is the healing work. That is you having conversations with those parts, you giving them space to express. Thank you, Becca, for typing them in the chat. It's very helpful to be able to read them. So knowing that we all have a true self, a core self, and knowing some of the qualities of that true self, and then being able to go through them to really identify in every specific moment, am I acting from my true self or am I acting from a part? A part is taking over. From there, we're going to go into the other concepts, right? So the self is our core, is wise and compassionate center. So that is our center. It is naturally calm, curious, and confident. And the self can heal and lead our parts with compassion. So the self is the one who can take all these parts and they can invite them in, they can hold space. That true self, that core self can be compassionate to listen to them, can be curious, can have the clarity to know when a part is activated. So it's like the manager of everything. It's like the CEO of that board of members, and every member is trying to scream out what they need. So just that is your true self. Okay, and then the parts of the psyche that the book talks about. Okay, there are three. So one part is they call them the exiles. Okay, and then the internal family systems categorizes parts into three main roles. So every part has a role. The exiles is the first part, the first role. They carry deep wounds and pain from past experiences. So anytime you experience trauma, they carry that part, they carry that burden, often suppressed because they hold intense emotions, shame, fear, grief. And examples are a hurt inner child who believes that they are unlovable. Okay? So these parts, they call them exiles because basically we will exile them. We will push them away because they are not safe, because they are part of ourselves that maybe are not accepted. Maybe we have been shut down and then it's too painful to use it. So we just put them in the exile. Okay, so then the next part, the next role is, they call them the managers. Okay, so these are the protective parts that try to prevent pain by maintaining control. So they're going to try to prevent you from feeling pain by controlling. They can manifest as perfectionism, people-pleasing, self-criticism, etc. An example can be the inner critic that pushes you to work harder to avoid failure. Okay? So the managers, again, they are the parts of yourself that are going to control so that you avoid feeling pain. The problem here, as I was saying, is that some of these parts, when they are created, they get stuck in the past. So basically, if you create, for example, an exiled part when you are a child, and then the manager is trying to prevent that pain from surfacing, it's gonna use techniques from when you were that age. If you were 6 or 5 or 4, it's going to manage the situation with those strategies. But now here you are, an adult, having way more resources, but those parts are stuck in the past and they are trying to keep you safe in the way they knew in that moment. So that's why the conversation needs to happen. You need to invite that part over. You need to be curious. You need to understand what that part needs from you, why they are doing what they are doing. And then you need to offer from your core true self, you need to offer them another option. I understand what you're doing. I am compassionate to understand that you are keeping me safe. Thank you. So you validate that part of yourself. You are very compassionate. You really listen to it. And then you offer a different way. It's like, I understand, but I cannot, my core self can keep me safe now using all these options rather than just being limited to this specific strategy that you learn. And it makes sense that that's what you had access to when you were little. But now, do you trust me to take over? And that is when the healing happens, when that part can relax and that part can go back to doing what they were supposed to be doing rather than having to be extreme. That's when the healing happens. Okay? So we talk about the exiles, we talk about the managers, and then there is another part, another kind of role that is called, they call them the firefighters. And this is the part, they are reactive protectors that step in when pain surfaces. So if you are all of a sudden starting to feel a lot of pain, a firefighter part is going to react immediately by doing something so that you will not feel that pain. So use impulsive coping mechanisms like addiction, anger, avoidance. And an example can be overeating or binge watching TV to escape feelings of unworthiness. This is one example. When I was reading the book and I was listening to some of the podcast episodes with the author, it's interesting because he was a family therapist first, and then he was treating people with bulimia and anorexia. And then he started to discover that the bulimia and the anorexia is a part of that person that is trying to do something so that that person can be safe. And then that is a firefighter showing up in the form of anorexia, in the form of bulimia, to keep that person from doing something. And then he discovered that by having a conversation first with the firefighter so that he can relax, and then he will go to the manager, and then from there he can go to the exile part. And then from that exile part, he can have a conversation, and then he can unburden that part, unburden all the emotional burden that exile part is carrying. And they call them firefighters because they are fighting the flames of these intense emotions that are happening in that moment. So imagine that you are having a conversation or you are doing something and all of a sudden you get super triggered, pain gets activated, and then you start feeling all these strong emotions. The firefighter is going to come up and do something to avoid that pain to happen. And that's why they call them firefighters, because they are fighting the flames of these intense emotions. Okay? So these are the three kinds of parts and roles that the book talks about. And then let me read the comments, see what you guys are saying. I overthink almost everything and it can be draining. What can I do to help? Yeah, overthinking. So overthinking, it sounds like maybe there is perfectionism in there. So it sounds like maybe you can have a conversation with that part of yourself that it's overthinking because they are trying to maybe keep you safe from you making a mistake, because maybe making mistakes, it wasn't safe in the past, and maybe you need to make sure that you avoid making mistakes. But then the fallacy here is that many times we learn through mistakes, and mistakes are a part of the journey. So maybe having a conversation that invites that part of yourself that is trying to keep you safe by overthinking can be helpful. So is there a time to ask questions? I love this theory, but how do we actually get in touch with these parts and get information from them? Yeah, we're gonna go down there, Nia, in a little bit. Okay, don't worry. We're gonna see what the book recommends, and then we're gonna see how we can have a conversation with these parts. Absolutely. Can you give me an explanation of exiles again, please, Emilio? Just a summary. Yeah, Peta. So the book talks about exiles. So someone that is in exile, if you look at politically, for example, is someone that is not allowed to be in their country and they have to go to exile because basically they are not legally allowed to be in a country. So emotionally speaking, imagine that you are 3 years old. You are in your home and then you have your parents with you. And imagine that the part of yourself that likes to express screaming and dancing, wow, I'm so happy, you do this. And then you are always shh, 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 shh. And then your parents really get uncomfortable when you do that. So what you learn in that moment is that part of yourself, for example, that is so big and expressive and loud, it is not allowed. When you do that, you don't receive love from your caregivers, from your parents. So you learn that part of yourself is not safe. That part of yourself doesn't belong in your family systems with your parents. And then you exile that part of yourself. And basically it's like you put that part of yourself in a cage and you put a label on it that says, it's unsafe to be this. I cannot express. And then you just keep going with your life. Anytime you feel the need to express, the manager is going to say, shh, when you did that in the past, all these things happen. So stay quiet. Please don't express. And then if for any reason you feel so constrained and you want to express and you start doing it, then a firefighter is going to show up and self-sabotage is going to happen. Something is going to happen so that you avoid feeling the pain that you felt when you were little. So that is an exiled part with an emotional burden. And that memory stays in your nervous system. So that's the healing happens when you can create a safe space. And then you can invite first the firefighter that may prevent you from accessing that. And then invite him to step away. And then you talk with the manager maybe and tell him, I have better ways of dealing with this pain. I see how much you are working and I can see how hard you work to keep me safe. But are you interested in maybe relaxing a little and I can show you different ways of dealing with this? And then we can agree on something together. So that manager steps away and then you access the core wound. You access the exile. You access that emotion, that part of yourself that was there. And then you invite it over. And then you have a conversation. And then I'm actually feeling the emotion now of this. So I'm explaining this and I'm already feeling the emotion. So when you can create that space and you can invite that piece of yourself, that is when the healing happens because you are accessing that exile. You are accessing and connecting with that part of yourself. And most likely you are going to reintegrate that part of yourself in a way that feels safe. You are going to be able to express yourself in a way that feels aligned with your true self. And that is when the healing happens. So yeah, this is just one example. Again, exiles can be so many different kinds, and each of you is going to have different kinds of parts. Each of you is going to have different kind of dynamics. The parts that you have inside of you are going to have a relationship. It's going to be different from person to person. So that's why in the next steps, we are going to start looking at the process that the book follows so that you can get started with getting in touch with this. And we can dive into that. I know someone had questions before. So do you guys have any questions before we dive into the actual practicality of how do we get in touch with the parts? Feeling emotion too, Emilio. Yeah, Heather, and that is beautiful. If you guys start to feel emotion, that means that you are connecting with something inside yourself that is feeling pain. It's been repressed. And there is something in here for you to discover. Thanks, Emilio, for your answer to my overthinking. It was very helpful as I was criticized constantly as a child. Yeah, Nan, so maybe you are connecting the thread of when I was little, I was criticized. When I was criticized, I learned that taking action and maybe having the courage to make a mistake, it wasn't accepted. So you exile that part of yourself that is adventurous, that is confident. And then the part of the overthinking stepped in, and that is so you exile that part of yourself, and then you have a manager And that manager is the overthinking. And it's like, you have to do this, you have to do this. No, don't do that. If we do that, blah, blah. So that is the part that is keeping that exile protected. And then maybe you may have firefighters that show up. Maybe if you find the courage enough to start taking action into a direction that may be dangerous, and the protector cannot stop you from that, then a firefighter is going to show up, and that can be self-sabotage, that can be you avoiding, it can show up in many different ways. So that is one example of how this can unfold. So mastery seems to need practice when not in the heat of the moment. Yeah, Becca, we are going to see in the practicality of this process, we are going to see how important using those 8 C's that we talked about, how important that is. Because when you are practicing this, you have to try to remain connected with your true self as much as you can. And anytime you are not able to be curious, anytime you are not able to be courageous, anytime you can have compassion for a part and you are judging or criticizing that part, anytime that you cannot have clarity because you are too involved. So all those signs are for you to help you understand, okay, you are not connected with your core self in this moment. And yes, self-regulation, taking space, taking a pause, breathing, doing something to kind of calm yourself down and then come back at it with a different approach. The inner child has more parts than only the exile, true? So Becca, the exile is just a label that they put into any part of yourself that wasn't accepted, goes to exile. Imagine that exile is a place outside of your true self. Imagine that is a place where you are going to put things and lock them and avoid using them, avoid inviting them over because it was too painful for you to use that part of yourself and it wasn't accepted. But what happens is that over time, those parts are going to bubble up somehow. And that's why we have firefighters. That's why we have unconscious behaviors that are going to repress those parts until we do the work of healing them, until we take the time to invite them and to figure out, how can I heal you? How can I integrate you in my life? How can I find a different way to keep you safe, to show you that I can take care of this in a way that serves us both? So exile is just the label of a place where you throw them so that you don't deal with them. Okay? I am pretty familiar with my firefighters. Yeah, and this is an ongoing work, guys. This is ongoing work. But knowing and being aware of this is very helpful because all of a sudden, you don't feel that you have a personality disorder. You understand that we all have parts inside of ourselves. The book talks about personality disorders and how we all have different personalities inside of us, but the people who have like personality disorders, those parts are extreme. They gain so much power and control that they are actually controlling full time, and there is no access to your core self at all. That's why it becomes toxic. It becomes completely disconnected from your core self. So, but we all have personalities. We all have different parts, and understanding that can help us be more compassionate with us and try to find different ways of accessing those parts and giving them space. Okay. So the next thing that I would like to talk about is like healing with this methodology. What does the book recommend? What is the process that the book recommends you follow? You can do this alone. You can do this in the company of someone. You can bring this to a therapist, to a coach, to someone that can hold space for you. But you can get started by yourself if you want. Many times, doing this with someone else can be more powerful because when you are in the middle of inviting a part or you are getting emotional, like having someone outside with that distance kind of guiding you through this process can be helpful. But you can get started and you can understand the process yourself, and maybe you can do some work first. And then when you get stuck, that's when you can reach out That's when you can be aware of, oh, this is an option for me to explore, and maybe someone else can help me go deeper with this. Okay? So are you guys ready to do this, to go through the practicality? Or are there any other questions before I do that? Yep. Okay, ready. Okay. So these are the steps that the book recommends. So the first step is to befriending your parts. So instead of fighting or suppressing parts, approach them with curiosity. Okay? Remember, one of the C's is curiosity. So just be curious. Don't repress them. Be curious. Example, when feeling anxious, ask, which part of me is feeling this way? What does it need? So what part of me is feeling anxious in this moment? And what does this part that is feeling anxious, what does this part need from me, from the situation? What is this part protecting me from? So you can ask different questions. Just be curious, trust your intuition, and then see what that part needs. See what that part is afraid of. See, why are you doing this? And then if I were to keep doing this, what is the worst that can happen according to you that you are trying to avoid? So curiosity, becoming friends with your parts. Okay? And then second step is to unblending from parts. Okay? So recognize when a part is taking over. Take a step back and allow the self to lead. Example, instead of reacting with anger, pause and ask, what is this anger protecting? Okay? So the book talks about pausing, just taking a break, stepping back. Take a deep breath, do something to self-regulate, and then don't get stuck if you are noticing that you are not following all the 8 C's. If you notice that you are getting tight, if you notice that you are not being curious anymore, if you notice that you are losing confidence in yourself, if you are feeling that you are afraid and you are not courageous to keep going, anytime you notice any of these things coming up, just step back, pause, breathe, and then come back when you can be curious, when you can be empathetic and compassionate, when you are not going to react, okay? So number 1, befriending your parts. Number 2, unblending from parts. So stepping back and observing those parts, having a conversation with those parts. And then number 3, witnessing and unburdening exiles. So you're going to witness and you are going to unburden the exiles. So acknowledge and listen to exiled parts. Allow them to express their pain in a safe way. Once they feel heard, help them release their burden. Okay? So this one is really important. Anytime you have taken a part of yourself and you threw them into the exile, you need to invite that part over. You need to be curious. You need to create a safe space. You need to listen. You need to validate that part of yourself. It makes sense that you did this. It makes sense that you want to keep me safe. You have to allow them to express their pain in a safe way without shutting them down, without criticizing them. And then once they feel heard, you need to help them release the burden. And the burden means the things that that part needed to do to keep you safe. So that part of you that is stuck in time believed that it had to do something to protect you. And maybe that something is overthinking. I have to self-sabotage you when I notice that you are going to take action because I don't want you to make a mistake because that was unsafe. So I'm going to do that so that you don't experience this pain again. So any strategy, any role that part took, you have to unburden that part and say, from now on, my core self, my true self is going to be able to handle this situation with safety. I hear you. I am grateful for all your work all these years. I am grateful that you kept me safe. I can see how hard you have worked. How will it feel if I keep us, you and me, safe and we can move forward together? So you just have a conversation and then offer to unburden that part. And then what happens is that then hopefully you can heal that aspect of yourself. You can retrieve that piece of yourself that was exiled, that part of yourself that you were craving unconsciously, but it wasn't accepted. And now you can move forward differently. Okay? And then the fourth step is reintegrating and leading with the self. That's what I was saying, right? Once parts feel safe and unburdened, they trust the self to lead. This creates inner peace and harmony. Okay? So that is the process. So Julia says, isn't this idealistic for someone that is 100% toxic, abusive? Julia, I will say that this is work that it can only be done when the person is willing to do it, right? Some people are going to be able and willing to do this work and to be curious. And some people, so answer me this question, Julia. Do you think that that person that you're talking about, do you think that they are following the 8 C's? Will you say that they are calm? Will you say that they have curiosity? Will you say that they have clarity and they have the ability to step out of the dynamic and look at it from the distance? Do you think that they are compassionate, that they can have compassion for everything that's happening? Will you say that they have confidence in themselves and knowing that they're going to find a way? Will you say that they have the courage to confront this? Will you say that they are creative to be able to see reality from a different perspective? And will you say that they feel connected? So just answer to those questions. And if the answer is no to some or all of them, then you know that that person is not connected to the true self right now. That person is completely controlled by these parts. And what you say about them being 100% toxic, I will reframe that. Instead of calling it toxic, abusive, I will go back to thinking in parts and I will reframe it to say, so if there are no bad parts, that means that every part of ourselves is trying to do the best they know to deal with the situation that is happening. So maybe that person that is 100% toxic and abusive, if we can step back and we ourselves can apply these 8 C's instead of reacting, instead of feeling attacked, instead of course, protect yourself if there is physical danger. But if it's just that person kind of going through that, you can be the one who can see through. Say, wow, you have so many parts that are trying so hard to keep you safe, but this is not the way to do it. Because those parts probably when this person was little, probably they learned how to do this way. And 30, 40, 50 years later, they are still doing the same strategy. And they didn't have the opportunity to heal. They didn't have the opportunity to unburden those parts and lead from the self. So when you can do that, of course, most likely if you are doing this work, if you are connected with the 8 C's, I will say that you are not going to align with a person that is not doing the same. You're going to reject, you're going to not feel energetically connected. You are not going to attract that kind of people, most likely, because you will not tolerate or accept those dynamics. But you can still have compassion. You can still see through those dynamics and know that, wow, that person is in pain. That person is not leading from self. So that is another way of looking at this situation. But yeah, 100%. Some people, if they have been completely traumatized and they didn't have the opportunity to heal and they didn't have a circle of safety around them or someone to model that for them, like they are doing the best they can, and probably that's the best they can do in this moment. But yeah, it can be idealistic. That is one way of looking at it. Internal family systems. Yeah, so Nia, beautiful. IFS, so internal family system, suggests that even our toxic parts deserve to be understood. Absolutely, because they are doing what they are doing for a reason. And if you can connect with your core self and then from that place have a conversation with that part and then unburden that part and then offer that part a different way of dealing with this, that is when that part is going to let go of control, it's going to trust you, and it's going to then relax. And then you will be able to move forward in a different way while integrating the part of yourself that you locked down, that you exiled. I see that they are in pain and trauma is part of it. However, I limit the time I allow with me to keep my boundaries and sanity. Julia, absolutely. I never said that you have to be present 100% with a person like that. And that is sometimes you being honest, sometimes you setting those boundaries, sometimes you being a mirror for what that person is doing. Maybe that is what they need to see. Because if they love you and they see that using what they are doing, they don't get you in, two things can happen, right? Like one, they keep doing and they completely remove you from their lives. Or they may, if they care about you, they may start thinking like, oh, wow, like, why is she or he doing this to me? Wow, I think they care about me, but I don't understand what's happening here. And you are planting a seed in their brains to maybe start looking at things differently. So sometimes the most compassionate step that you can do is to set your boundaries and to be clear about them, even though in the moment may feel clunky or selfish, but you are seeing what's happening and you are always following those 8 C's, but you are actually saying, I see this happening and I don't tolerate this. I am not going to participate in this. And then boundaries are always necessary sometimes, right? So compassion is key to this theory. If you can experience compassion for yourself, I think you would struggle with IFS. Yeah, Nia, the book makes a huge emphasis in compassion and love. Like love and compassion, those are the two components that you need, especially to confront parts that you have been judging and criticizing for a really long time. You have to be able to step into that. Be willing to be curious, be willing to be compassionate, and be willing to understand that they have done the best they could to keep you safe in the way they knew. And then now is your opportunity to give them a different way. Is your opportunity to lead from your core self and show them that you can do this, taking them into account, not suppressing them, right? That's why the process of, so let me recap the process. Okay, so that is very clear. Step number 1 is befriending your parts. Step number 2 is unblending from parts, stepping away and creating distance. Step 3 is witnessing and unburdening exiles. So you're going to create a safe space. You're going to listen. You're going to validate that part. You're going to be curious. And you're going to say thank you to that part. You're going to be compassionate about it. And then the step number 4 is reintegrating that part in yourself and then leading with the self, not with the part that was traumatized and burdened. Okay? So yeah, so these are the steps that the book recommends. And then there are some practical practices that we can talk about. I just want to know if there are any other questions or like what's coming up for you guys after this? Like, is this something that you feel is helpful? Is this something that you are resisting? What is coming up for you about this methodology? So thanks. How do we discover our different parts? I think I have sensed one, a small boy. So what I would recommend you all guys do, if you are curious about this is what I did. I went to my podcast where I listen to podcasts. I like listening to content. And then I searched for the author and I searched for internal family systems. And then I listened to a couple of episodes, 3 episodes concretely, where someone is interviewing the author and they actually do a live session where you can see this in action. So this is free. You can listen to this at your own pace and you can see a real therapy session using internal family systems methodology. And then you can get a sense of how it works. You can see someone else doing it and then you can follow the steps. So that is one way that I would recommend. When I was reading the book, in the book, there was also a podcast episode that is an interview of him with another person. And then he actually does also a session on that person. And I can share all these things at the end of the live if you want the specific details for you to listen to those. But that is something that I would recommend you do if you are interested. So can you go a little further into step 4, please? So step 4 is the reintegrating, right? It's reintegrating and leading with the self. Yeah, so basically this part is when you have become friends with that part, you have created space and invited that part to speak with you. You have validated that part. You have seen that part. You have acknowledged what they have done for you. You can say thank you. And then you offer the opportunity to listen. I have a better way to deal with this. Together, we can keep us safe in a different way. Instead of you doing this behavior, I can offer you this, and I can offer you this, and I can offer you this. How does that feel? How does that feel if I remove this burden of you having to do this, and I lead us into safety together, and I will invite you to come back to my life. So imagine that I'm talking to the part of myself that learned that expressing and being big was not allowed. So now you are inviting them to step over and say, here, come in here, come with me, and now we're going to be able to do this together in a different way. So that is you integrating that part of yourself. That is you unburdening that part that was created in exile, and that part had to do something to keep you safe. All of a sudden, you have transmuted all of that, and you have created a different way to stay safe, to move forward while reclaiming that part of yourself that was lost. Is this clear? Peter, did I answer your question? Yeah, I realized that this will be helpful for me. I think I need help with it, but don't know resources for therapy in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. Yeah, so Heather, I will recommend that you listen to those podcasts first, listen to some content so that you get familiar. In the book, there are different activities. I can share some of the activities that the book recommends for you to explore these things. So one of them is doing a self-check-in. So sit quietly and notice your internal dialogue. Okay, identify which part is speaking, and then ask it, what do you need from me? So that is one way. If you are struggling with something concrete in your life right now, you can sit in silence and then you can talk out loud, like, I am struggling with this. And I am sensing a part of me that wants to. And then once you identify one part, that's when you start the process. Okay, be curious. Separate yourself from that part. Ask that part. Normally, if you listen to these episodes, he always starts. So what are you? What part are you? Where are you in the body? And then you will say, oh, you are in my stomach. I can feel it in my throat, or I can feel it in. And then, so what do you need? Why are you doing this behavior? And then what happens if Emilio does this? So what are you afraid is going to happen when Emilio does this? And then, and that's when you start discovering, right? You can write the dialogue with your parts. You can have a journal, and then you can write down the conversation between the self and a part. So you can have a conversation and you can write down, oh, this part is telling me this and this and this. And then you can then validate that part. I can see how hard you are working. I can see how you are doing this for me. I can see how for all these years, I didn't know how to do this properly, and you had to keep me safe. And then from there, you can do the next step, right? So I'm going to unburden you. I'm going to offer you different ways of staying safe without having to do this. And how does it feel if you trust me now, my core self? Because I'm treating you with compassion, I am being curious, I have validated you, and I can see different ways of moving forward together. How does that feel? And then once you get the part to agree to that, then that part of yourself is kind of relaxed. and then you can integrate that with yourself. Okay. And yeah, Rosie, you guys can find therapists that are specialized in internal family systems. I'm pretty sure you can find them in your area. And if not, probably online, because you don't have to be present. You don't have to be in person. And this is something, for example, that I personally use when I'm working with clients, right? As I say, this applies to anything in your life. So many times I am helping someone like organize something, and a part of themselves shows up. And that part of themselves is showing up for a reason. So sometimes I do tapping, sometimes I do inner child work, sometimes I do this kind of therapy, like try to, again, I'm not a therapist about this, but I integrate all of these parts and I try to get curious and I try to hold space. And you know what you need. This is the secret, guys. You all know what you need. You just have to create the space and create the safety for that to come out. And sometimes that is the work that a therapist, someone is just going to guide you and create that safety for you so that you can then express and you can explore and you can do the work inside of that container. Reparenting ourselves is important, and this internal family system seems like a great resource too. Yeah, absolutely, Becca. This is a very good complement. As we navigate our individual paths, we contribute to a vibrant tapestry of human experience. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like the idea of journaling the conversation. Lisa, for some of you, journaling will feel good because maybe that's the way you process. For some of you, maybe you just grab your phone and you record a message. If you don't like writing down, you can make a video of yourself and then you can say, listen, I had a conversation with this part of myself and the part told me this, and I can see how I can do this. And then I am reintegrating this part of myself. And then you can journal, you can reflect, you can meditate on that, and then go deeper as you do this work. But yeah, so I hope that you guys found value in this episode. I hope that you felt inspired to maybe explore more about this. And yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to share them. Maybe there are opportunities for future episodes on this, maybe expanding more on some of these areas. But I think for now, I think this is enough. I think this is something that you guys can start taking action on. I hope that I planted a seed in your brain about a new way of looking at things, a new way of you being able to connect with those wounds, connect with those parts of yourself that are exiled, caged, however you want to call it, and then find a way to invite them back in your life, find a way to heal them, find a way to listen to them, and find a way to stop any cycle that you may find yourself in. Maybe self-sabotage, maybe perfectionism, maybe self-criticism, maybe feeling unworthy, maybe people-pleasing, maybe not setting the boundaries that you need. Really anything that you are struggling in your life, you can use this methodology to be curious and explore. Okay? So I hope to see you guys in the next one.